Hello, welcome to the Smoking Guns podcast. We're up to episode 4. That's 3 more than I expected, so that's a win for us, I'd say. Today we're in the Derby Theatre studio. We've decided to change a bit location because we did 2 episodes in the same place and that's not really our style. Today we have with us Charlie. Charlie is a writer. That's the topic of today. So what we're going to be talking about is basically how to become a playwright in the industry and how to write for the screen as well. So television and films. Once again, I'm Andy.
I'm Fatih.
And this is Charlie, who is going to be our guest for today. So, you know all about us. We've spoken about everything we know. Charlie, tell us about you. Tell us what you do.
Well, I'm an actor and writer based in Derby. I've just come out of a master's degree doing writing for performance. Before that I did 3 years with you guys at Theatre Arts. And during that time sort of found that as much as I loved acting, I wanted to get into the writing side of it, so hence the MA, and that's why I'm here.
Yeah, I think the best thing about writing is that you act when there is a play to act in, you direct when there is a play to direct, but you can write at any time.
Yeah.
That's the good thing about writing. You don't need to do anything else. You don't need anyone else to help you. You can just write and then have that for whenever it happens to put it on or anything. But that's my favorite thing about writing, and I think it's very healthy for performance to always write and to always have that at the back of their minds, because it's a great outlet for creativity when there aren't any other ones, especially.
Yeah, I agree totally with that point, and I feel like everybody kind of has the ability to write. I'm not saying write well, but everybody has the ability to write. And I'm just interested to understand why you chose to do your degree, and if you could just walk us through like a week, of your lectures. What did you do? What did you learn? Because I think a lot of people are interested in seeing kind of like the backstage of what it means to study writing, and then what it means to go into the professional life as a writer.
Okay, well, the main reason I took the MA at the end of the day was you're always in that stage when you finish your undergraduate degree, you're not really sure where to go next.
Yeah.
And after having that interest in writing, it's sort of a theatre arts degree didn't feel like enough to sort of apply for a staff writing job at a production company or a broadcaster. And going on to the MA, if you obviously pass it, you get that little bit extra on the CV that if you apply to a job like that, a staff writing job, if you're not going freelance, then that's something as the bonus on the CV. Lecture-wise, we started off by looking at a lot of what is a story. We looked at Robert McKee's story, John Yorke's Into the Woods, looked at a lot of story structure first, and we did a lot of exercises before we got onto our idea and our script. We did a lot of exercises where we were writing like 1-page short stories, understanding who the protagonist is, what the antagonizing force or who the antagonist is. What do they want? What do they actually need? So a lot of the first semester was spent on story structure.
Yeah.
When we eventually found maybe about halfway to 3/4 of the way through that first semester, we then found, when we had our idea, we was moving on to the actual structure of how that plays out in a script. So where does the inciting incident happen? Like roughly what page? Where's your midpoint? Where's your climax? Where's the falling action, the denouement, etc.?
So like a surgeon, you looked at a script and you kind of dissected it and looked at all the organs of I find that super interesting just listening to that, because we write as a company as well, and when we write we look at these things that we have learned in first and second year of our degree, but it's not in that depth. And I feel like if somebody, for instance, you would look over one of our scripts, they would go, okay, this is the inciting incident, and we'd be like, I thought it was this, and then you could justify that, and I find that fascinating just listening to you being able to to just dissect and basically just look at a script and like take away all the artistic things and just look at it from like a statistical aspect, you know.
Yeah.
So that sounds really like a really cool thing to learn.
Yeah, if you put like a script in front of me, I'm not saying I'd do it perfectly, but I'd know roughly where to look in the script to find all of those things I just mentioned. Think it's easier for me to do that with screenplay because I've spent a lot of my own time looking at that more than I have been plays. Because we spent a lot of first semester looking at plays and strictly plays, and then we were told that we could apply anything that we do with that, anything we find from looking at a play or anything that you write for a play, you can apply in the exact same way for a television pilot or a feature-length film, which in my opinion was wrong.
Yeah.
Like we spent the entire first semester looking at plays on paper.
Yeah.
We watched films, but we would watch maybe half a film or 3/4 of a film and sort of say, right, what have we found so far? We'd list everything off, but then we would have the homework of reading a play and finding everything that happens, and all the, the plot points, all the subplots. Yeah. What does this say? What political message is here? And we were told that this can just be applied to screen, and I didn't find that was the case. I feel that we would have benefited a lot more for those that wanted to write screen, and a good 60% of us were writing screen.
Yeah.
Would have been to have had a full 90-page script of a film, like, I don't know, Saving Private Ryan. Okay, that's more than 90 pages, but Saving Private Ryan, have the paper in front of you and do the same method as we did with the play to a screenplay. And I think that's something that the course that I was on lacked in a way. So a lot of what I had learned about screenplays had come from my own reading, like, outside of university, which you are told when you take an MA that a lot of it is down to you. But it was you never really, they were never enthusiastic about go and read some screenplays. They never told us to do it.
So was that because they were more focused on theatre plays, or is that just because they didn't teach it, so they didn't care about it?
Perhaps a mix of the both. Like, knowing who we had as a lecturer for this particular module, she is strictly just theatre. She doesn't write for screen. She writes only for theatre, so she was only showing us theatre plays.
Okay.
Published work as well. Like, it was always in a book, so it's always been published. So highly recommended, and it was always Miss Julie, Top Girls.
So very modern.
So Strindberg famous for the writing, especially.
Yes, it's quite modernistic and that kind of like style
naturalistic.
of writing.
Yeah, and dealt with a lot of issues within the text.
Yeah.
So
and I think those plays in theatre as well, when you adapt them for theatre, a lot of it is commanded by the text. It's like when you look up Brecht, the German playwright, a lot of what is written has to be done 100% on stage as well. So it's quite interesting how much power a writer sometimes can have with a script, how much he can allow of leeway or not leeway. And I feel like these plays are very, very strict on what they need.
We would definitely struggle. The way we write scripts is very different.
Yeah.
So I think we would definitely struggle with something as structured as that, because we improvise scenes and then we film the improvisation, and then we write down what we've improvised and we modify it a little bit to make it more artistical. But we would definitely struggle with the amount of structure, I'd say, that all of these classical plays have. Maybe that's why they're classical, because of their structure, but it's definitely very clinical theater. I'd say. I think clinical is the way. So that's kind of why what I understand, that's why you did a lot of clean cut theater.
I got in a heated argument with one of my lecturers about writing about exactly that, the clinical and the unclinical, and the understanding that I believe that it's more of a democracy in the end. You as a writer sometimes write something, send it off, you're never part of the whole process of it then ending up on stage, or sometimes you are there the whole way and you are a producer as well and you help write it and you help mold the story and put it on stage. And then the argument for me was that sometimes I believe that the power shift can be a problem for a production, because an actor doesn't feel comfortable with a line or doesn't think it fits in, but the writer forces it onto the final production. And I feel like sometimes where we are in England, especially in England, is a writing powerhouse. It very much depends on those. People go to see plays because A, a top actor, or B, because of a writer. A lot of people go see work from certain people. And I would like to know your opinion on how you think where the writer plays, puts his place. Do you think you should have the ultimate power of saying, no, I wrote this and this should be what they should do, or what do you kind of like feel like is the right thing to do?
It's interesting you ask me that, actually, because I wrote my dissertation on it.
Yeah.
About how much involvement can the writer have? Where do they have to stop so that the director then takes over, or the production team as a whole takes over? And then when you sell it on to a theatre, how often are you able to go and sit there and with the director and sort of, when he makes or they make a directorial decision, are you able to butt in and say, well, that's not what I meant? I think I found that difficult when I was writing stage pieces earlier on, because I was writing it in a way that in the stage direction I knew what I wanted to see on the stage, so I was writing in that style. So we see this, we see that, he's wearing this, the character's wearing such and such clothing, there's this on the stage right, there's this stage left, and then showed it to the lecturer and it was get rid of all of it, lines right through everything.
Yeah, that's something that we always encounter. They say get rid of all the stage directions and make it your own. So I think that the way they teach it, especially in drama schools and stuff like that, they teach it as the stage directions are the vision of the writer, but in order to make it your own, you get rid of those and you act on on those lines. But what does that then do to the vision of the writer? Is that just meant to be for the people who read the play? Is that who the writer writes for? Does the writer only make plays for people to read them, and then the second you watch a performance of the play, it's completely different? Or that's been a big
really
debate.
Yeah, and I feel like what was the author from Waiting for Godot and Beckett, and I think Beckett is a really interesting argument. And for people who don't know, there's the Beckett Foundation, which makes sure that what is written is 100% shown on stage. So if you want to do a play by Beckett, you need to apply, but in a grander scheme, I need to apply to the foundation, and they will come to your show, and they're gonna look at the script, and they're gonna look at what you got rid of and stuff, and then they will close your show down if it's not what they believe is reflecting on what Beckett said, because he said, I put every single word there for a reason, even the stage directions. And I feel interesting that you as a young writer then are taught to take out those stage direction and then limiting your artistic vision. And I feel like there's a huge, we're having this debate right now, but I think there's a huge debate in modernistic and in that fourth wave theatre that we're experiencing right now with devising theatre, with studio theatre. There's a huge, where does that fit in? Where's that Beckett style fit in with our theatre company? If you wrote something for Smoking Guns now, and it said, Fatih's gonna stand there, and Andy's gonna come in from here, and they're gonna say the line like that. Does that work for the style that we're doing, or does that work overall in the theatre that's being created right now? And maybe is that the reason that they're disencouraging it?
I think the example you give is sort of like a matter of, it's like respecting each other. It's like, if I know that if I was to write something for Smoking Guns, I know what you guys are capable of. So then that almost comes into a position of, well, is the writer then almost directing? Am I already preemptively directing you guys when I write a line? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think a couple of things you mentioned about when I think that's what really pushed me from writing theatre and wanted to go into screenwriting, because I got demotivated to write theatre. Every time I was told, take this line out, take that line out, and it was just stripping all of the stage direction or anything that was action based, because I was told that as the writer, the director isn't going to care about that. They're going to strip it naked down to its dialogue and nothing else, and then they're going to do it how they wish to deliver the dialogue all the way through. And I found that with that, there's a lot of subtext that goes on in the action that I feel is massively important when you write it into theatre. And I think there was a moment in me that, as I then started the master's degree, and we were told, you can write for theatre, screen, television, theatre, film, television, or radio. And I immediately crossed theatre off my list because I'd done it twice already, and I didn't want to go through that whole process of trying to write this incredibly subtextual story and just watch it melt away because somebody else was telling me your director is not going to care about this and cross it all out.
But then on the other hand, you got like Shakespeare, and you got things that are dependent on what the writer says, and there's a reason that, like we're going 5 steps back to that we just talked about, and I feel like you as a young writer, that has caused you to be disencouraged with a whole industry of things, So it's just really interesting of like, maybe is there to be had a debate that you form a directing and a writing course together, so you learn from both sides, So you learn, why is the director not going to care about these words? Or why is the director, should I care about this, I feel sometimes what we do in theatre, and definitely in the performing arts, is we separate these roles so heavily. So you want to be a director, you're going to go to this school and you're going to learn about directing, and you're going to learn by directors to direct, You want to be a writer, you're going to go to this writing course now, and then so on and so on. And I feel like what we've arrived to right now is a more of a collaborative process in theatre. And I feel like it would help us and benefit us more if, as in what we did, is learn more from each other.
That's true, but you're talking about two different theatres in a way. So that's why you have the Shakespeares and the Samuel Becketts, who can, obviously, because of how famous they are and how big their names are, people go see shows just because it is Samuel Beckett. People go see shows just because it is Shakespeare. They're sacred in a way.
Yeah.
But people don't want to give the power that Shakespeare has at the moment, that Beckett has, to new writers, because everyone wants to put their own stamp on a production.
Yeah.
The writer wants to put their stamp on, the director wants to put their stamp on, and the actors want to put their stamp on, the technical team. Everyone wants to make that show their own and to make it stand out. When we make our productions as a small theatre company, if somebody was writing the shows for us, we would love to have the writer in and to watch and say, was this what you saw as well? This is what we saw. It'd be a collaborative process. But when you just send out and you buy the rights to something, a lot of Amdram productions, what do? They go out, they buy the rights to 9 to 5 by Dolly Parton, they have the videos of her, and they do the same show every single time. That's a different type of theatre, I would say, than what we do as a small company.
But I feel like it should be something that we should consider, at least for the new wave of young writers, the new wave of young directors, is not separating these things so much that we need to feel, and we need to feel like we need to put a stamp on things. If you feel part of a team, and you say this has been made by, when something's made by Smoking Gun, I feel the pride myself in something. But not have the need to say, okay, this is just Charlie Brennell. And you have to do that in order to survive, because you need to up the name Charlie Brennell as much as you can until you get those, more and more gigs. But if you had the opportunity of entering a team and then working as that team, and then, but this is like a dream world, because everything is so separated,
Would you be willing to write with certain people in mind? So, for example, if someone said, we're looking for a show for the BBC that's going to have David Tennant as a main character. David Tennant, everyone knows him. He has a certain style of acting. Would you be willing to write with a certain person in mind for a character? Or would you feel like that is stomping on your creativity too much? Obviously, the money would be a factor. Obviously, always, because I think a lot of people are fine with stomping on their creativity for the right amount of money.
Yeah.
But let's say it's just someone that you know, and you know that they have a very specific style of acting. Would that be something that you'd be interested in doing and writing for people, for only for those people to play the character?
Yeah, I think so, because on a smaller scale, I've done that, because people that we know, I've tried writing characters for people that we know that can, if we performed it on a smaller scale, and this is talking like stage now, then yeah, I would want certain people to play a certain role because I know what they're capable of doing. In a way, the example you give about David Tennant, like, we know what he's capable of doing, but I wouldn't write a role that was sort of similar to anything that he's already done. I wouldn't try to say, right, you're David Tennant, you've been Doctor Who, you've been Hamlet.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't then try and write a role that was sort of like one of those. I would just attempt to write a character that was interesting as a character and people can buy into the character because of who that character is, not because David Tennant is playing it. It's a tough one, but I wouldn't write just because. I wouldn't write it just because.
It was a difficult one. I'm sorry. Yeah. I did put you in a pickle. Let me rephrase it. When people go to see a Nicolas Cage film, they want him to be crazy.
Yeah.
They want him to go, oh, it's the bees, it's the blah blah blah. That they don't want a Nicolas Cage that's just like, hello, my name is Nicolas Cage. No, they expect something from him. Is that something that you'd be willing to do, or do you think that would be compromising your writing style? That was my example with David Tennant as well. He has such a specific style. That's what people expect, and they might be disappointed if that's not what they get from him.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I think yeah, it might almost put me off writing.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, it would put me off writing if I was writing this crazy character for Nick Cage, and I see this story where this character isn't crazy. It's just he might seem crazy in the words, but it could be played by somebody that's quite relaxed, quite calm, and those lines could be delivered in a neutral way. But then Nick Cage gets hold of the script and delivers it in his crazy way. Then that's something that could be possible. But if I was commissioned and say, right, you are writing this role for Nick Cage, I don't know if I'd be able to do it.
Okay.
Because I am then told you are writing like this. You have to write it like this in this style. You've got to come up with a story with an interesting character that acts like Nick Cage. It's like, well, that's been done before.
Yeah.
So
I feel like as well this reflects on what has happened with a lot of young artists in their career. You know, you are really restricted by what other people want you to do until you have gained enough momentum to make stuff that is you. You know, that's a big reason that we decided not to go into drama school and not to get agents, was because we wanted to do something that represented us as people, you know, like we wanted to do crazy work that Isabel, Andy, Gary and me, you know, like stuff that, you know, we can't explain people unless we show it, you know, in that kind of sense. And I feel like with young writers as well, you know, you have to go through the process of finding an agent, then getting representation, and then he might turn around to you and be like, yeah, I want you to write for a sports show, or I want you to write for that, you know, and, you know, you need to eat, you need to survive. And I feel like sometimes that is there's a real thing that we have to keep on reminding ourselves, is, you know, it's not fair by any sense, you know, because you have to get that momentum, you gotta get that gravity around you until you are allowed to be Charlie Brendel. And I feel like that's a big issue right now, and bigger this is like undermining young voices a lot. It's like, you haven't wrote enough to know how to write this. You haven't written enough, to know how to write this, you know, or you haven't been featured in all these big theaters, so we don't trust your work in that kind of sense, you know. and you have to take huge gambles, and huge amount of time out of your life to apply to all these places, and then have to deal sometimes with that rejection. In our last podcast we did talk about active rejection, but then there's that real writer rejection as well, and I feel like it's a really interesting thing to look at as well.
That's what I was asking with the Nick Cage example is, would you be willing to be an actor that writes the way he's told to in order to make it, or would you be willing to say no, I want to write what I want to write? Because it's the same with Hollywood directors. You have someone like I don't remember who did the last Han Solo film or something, but they did reshoots and they brought in this new director who was such an easy choice because they knew he was going to deliver the film that they wanted, but it was always going to be the same thing. It was never going to be like something people didn't expect. That's the big challenge, I think, especially for young writers. Are you gonna stand up to your morals, or do you wanna work more?
Yeah.
And I think it's the same with acting and the plays that you put on and the plays that you deliver. Are you gonna do things so that you get funding from the Arts Council easier, or are you gonna try and make the shows that you want to make, and then hopefully people will enjoy it?
Yeah, I think what we can lead on to next is is that professional life as a writer? Because I feel like a lot of people are really interested in what's the 9 to 5. We get your 9 to 5 is not yet we are even not at that proper professional step, but I'm pretty sure you have an understanding of a 9 to 5 of a writer, and I'd be really interested to listen to that. As a production team writer or as a solo writer, and what kind of things it goes with. What is the lifestyle? Basically?
Well, recently, being in that early stage of my career in trying to look for an agent and stuff, my 9 to 5 is sort of getting at the computer and looking at who's next to send the script off to.
Yeah.
Is there any more agents looking for clients? Is there any more production companies that are accepting unsolicited work? A good chunk of my day at the moment is taken up with searching for agents and companies that are looking for work, and then the other half of it is sort of brainstorming new ideas and trying to come up with new material, and a few short ideas have come out of it that I've then started typing up. So it's always good to make sure
self-motivated
that
work,
you're trying to keep going with the writing. It is hard because if you're not in a production company and you're not working with anybody else, you're not getting a motivational kick out of anybody else. Nobody's saying, right, come on, you need to do this. When you're working on your own, it is tough to keep pushing at it every single day. I've gone through that stage recently of sending stuff out and having a rejection notice or whatever. But as many people say, every rejection is one step closer to acceptance, isn't it? So you have to treat it as, you just take it on the chin and you carry on. You have to get back up and carry on.
Yeah.
And that is how my last few weeks have been in that sense, yeah.
So as part of your masters, you wrote a play, a screenplay.
Pilot episode for a television show, yeah.
Pilot episode for a television series. So you have, it's done. How long is it?
It's currently 69 pages long. It was 85.
Do you have a time?
I think it's a minute a page, isn't it, about?
Yeah, it was sort of told to try and keep to about a minute a page, yeah. But a lot of places that you send material to, if they're specifically looking for pilot television shows, they say anywhere between 55 and 75 pages, I think it was.
So they work in pages, not in minutes?
Yeah, they work.
Okay.
Some places work with pages, and some places do work with minutes. But that's an argument of depends what's on the page, right?
Exactly. With a play, I think it's easier to estimate how long it would take in time based on the number of pages. I think with film and television, it's a lot more difficult because it's not only what the characters say, it's also what's happening the other time. So the things that we just see, for example. So you've written a pilot for a television show, and now you're looking for agents and places. Are you applying with your show, or are you applying with yourself? With this example, this is something I've written. What is the most important for you at the moment? To get this pilot made, or to get your name made through people reading this pilot?
My idea is I'm using this pilot as the calling card script. So to me, if it gets made, brilliant. But if it doesn't, but it gets me the agent and the representation, then that's even better for me. I think getting that agent for me is the big kick.
Yeah.
So a lot of my covering letters and emails that I've been sending out have been, I introduce myself first, who I am, what I'm about, what I've just been doing, and then halfway through that letter is, this is the idea that I wish to present to you. If you're interested, then let me know and I'll send it to you. So I never send it straight to them unless they've asked for it, like on their website.
Okay.
It's usually a covering letter or an email with my CV attached. And then if they're interested in reading the idea based on the 1 or 2 paragraphs I've given them, then it's sending the script out. So for me, yeah, it's more about getting my name out there and bringing in work first than it is getting my pilot produced and made. Yeah,
that's a really interesting mindset as well.
Yeah.
Is that kind of like putting yourself first and then the work will follow.
Exactly,
But
because
it's-
I don't know if it's the same for us. I don't know if that's
No.
how we operate. I think we look for the project to go first, and then
But
be like, we've made this.
we find it as well very interesting. What we've been finding, a lot of people are more interested, not necessarily more interested, but they are really interested in us as people and in our dynamic
Yeah.
of, like, you know, you got these 2 foreigners and an English dude, and we're all 3 men and we identify as men, and what kind of dynamic that has in our work. And I feel like sometimes you underestimate how much your personality feeds into why or what you're doing, you know.
Yeah.
We're just gonna have to have a little break from here, and then we're gonna be back in about 5 minutes. So see you guys after.
And we're back, everyone. We're talking to Charlie about writing for theater and writing for the screen. Tell us, what are the differences between writing a play to be put on as a live performance in the theater and writing a play for the screen?
I have found I've had more freedom when writing for screen. Like what we were saying earlier about when the director is expected to just scratch everything out that you've written. When I was writing for screen, there's so much more freedom and fluidity about the scene descriptions and the action that's taking place. And you also, I find when having read plays and written plays myself, that you end up with pages of dialogue because of that reason, because of taking stuff out. You end up with strips of dialogue, and that is one of the biggest sins you can commit when writing for the screen. Like, it's all about the action that takes place. It's a visual medium. Stage can be visual and spoken medium.
Yeah.
Like, how many one-man shows do we watch?
Yeah,
it's
which
just one
they feel
person
like
stood-
lectures. Like,
Yeah, they do
this
feel
is
like
my
lectures.
story. Listen to
But if you
me.
imagine that written down on the page,
Yeah.
it's just 40 pages of dialogue and
Yeah.
nothing else happening. So the biggest thing for me writing for screen is you can have more imagination about it. You don't have to limit yourself to the things that are available to you physically within the space.
Yeah.
Like, of course, you've got to think about the budget for the production if that ever gets that far. But if you're writing for fun and you want to write a piece of screen for fun without thinking, oh, this is going to get made and I need to be careful of my $1 million budget or whatever, you can have entire control over everything that happens. Like, that's how I felt when writing a TV pilot anyway.
So you went from being like closed off
Mhm.
to like being like, oh yeah, I am God, basically. in this.
Almost coming out of my shell in a way and
Yeah.
being able to write what I want to write.
Yeah.
And having done that, it's the first piece of screen I've ever written, but I think it's the best piece I've ever written so far.
And I find that interesting when you say that is a visual medium as well with screen. And like I've seen movies, Nocturnal Animals just jumps to my mind immediately, where the first 15 minutes was just visual. It was people dancing and, you know, doing grotesque, you know, faces, and it mattered so much to the rest of the mood of the film. It just introduced that mood right at the beginning. And I find that interesting that I always like to count the minutes when I see a screen production or like a theater production, how long it takes for the first person to say something, because it's a different piece before somebody speaks, you know?
Yeah.
Because you're introducing something, you're introducing a mood, you're introducing all these things, and then when the first spoken word happens, you introduce the language and you introduce something else. So
You introduce character.
yeah,
Like,
and
as
all
soon
these
as
other.
dialogue happens.
But beforehand, it's just your own imagination going wild, because there's no dialogue, there's no restrictions. You're just projecting yourself onto what you're seeing, until that first word is spoken,
Mhm.
and then it becomes something else. So I can clearly see where that freedom comes from, and it must have like been like revelation, finding something where you've been able to just do yourself, a favor and write the way you wanted to
Yeah.
write.
Yeah, definitely. Like I say, the main thing was about the freedom. Like, if you look at the first page of the script that I wrote, there's dialogue on that first page, but there's probably half a page of action or a few lines of action. But I imagine that action, if we come back to what we were saying about a page per minute, I don't imagine that being 30 seconds. That's probably a good couple minutes before the dialogue is then spoken. So the differences between screen and stage is more, for me, structured, and you've got to be thinking about the director and the audience and the actors all the time. And that's not to say that you're not doing that in screen, it's just that you can feel that you're not restricted to when you're writing the scene action and the scene description, or you can explain what a character is wearing because that's offering a subtext, and the director is expected to respect the fact that the writer has written that in, because the writer has put it there for a reason. Like what we were saying with the stage, you're expected that the director's going to cross everything out, and
So you don't
expect that you
write
never
it
put
in.
it there for
Yeah.
a reason. You're just waffling on, and that's not the case.
Yeah, and I feel like with a lot of like nowadays, TV has changed into a whole other medium with like Netflix and what it has given artists the ability to do. Certain Netflix programs. Netflix just puts 100 million there and goes, you do you. And I love that. I love that mentality of a company with money being able to say, you're a great artist. You've got this fan base. We got money. We trust you to make something good. And then you got people like, Walt Disney and Warner Brothers who have, entire committees of people who have to keep it in the Walt Disney brand or in the Warner Brothers brand.
Yeah.
I feel like that restricts writers as well.
How many films do we see now that at the end of the credits they have a writer and then 24 names? So you always think, how can 24 people write a film? How can 24 voices come together to do that? And most of the times those films don't work, or they seem disjointed, or they seem like different films in different parts, because writing by committee is just these big companies going, what do kids love nowadays? What do they love? It's like the guy with a cigar going, yeah, come on, what do they like? They like vlogs. Make them vlog. Make someone a vlogger.
Put YouTube in it. Put YouTube.
Yeah, put some YouTube in it. Those kids love YouTube. Yeah, I love it. It's like
Josh
Venom.
Paul.
They love Venom. Put Venom in it. It's like
They love Tom Hardy.
It's like what? They love Tom Hardy. Why is Venom here? Why is Venom gonna be part of the Marvel universe? The kids love him. Put him in it. Put him in it. That's how it feels like. So I think that's the difference between something like the way Netflix operates and the way Hollywood operates and the way television operates at the moment. And Netflix is winning because they're giving that freedom you're talking about to their artists.
Yeah.
Because how you look at these directors who make one great film and then they're given a whole franchise, or like they're given a superhero film.
Yeah.
They literally make one small budget film that has a lot of success, and then they're given this huge budget and going like, go make a Superman film.
Yeah. And that can destroy your career, because if that is not up to expectations, you won't be booked because you don't have that trust. And a lot that happens is with statistics and money. And that's how Netflix operates as well. And that's where the writer comes in. If you're statistically known as a writer not to bring in a profit on your shows, you won't be booked, And that's crazy. That's not even artistic. That is a statistic that comes behind it, maybe your artistic, you know, is a niche and attracts only so many people. Should that then, because you're statistically not bringing in as much as a other movie, should that restrict you from making something, you know? Like a movie that we watched, Hereditary. I'm sure that movie wasn't for everybody. It was marketed.
It was
falsely.
written by one person.
Yeah, and it
That's
was.
the thing.
We loved it because it put a new twist on a horror genre and stuff like that. But you know, it got a lot of backlash for not being what people wanted it to be. So now, should that writer suffer because he hasn't, you know, produced something that comes up to the mainstream?
The mainstream.
Yeah, and I feel like
yeah.
mainstream is a hard one for artists, anyways, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you're sometimes caught up in the mainstream of things?
Not really. Not particularly, no. I've never thought, what are the mainstream going to think if I decide to write this? There was a moment in one of the shorts that I'm developing that I thought could go quite dark at a particular moment. And I did have to stop and think, but if I do that, I'm going to get a whole lot of backlash for the complete wrong reasons. So I chose not to write it in, essentially. So maybe that's the only time I've considered mainstream. But for everything else I've written, I've not considered
I hate
it. It's
that
just
moment. Sorry, I'm cutting in. Is
No,
that,
yeah.
yeah? That, I can see that we have that as well. When we have something so grotesque and we're thinking, are we gonna alienate ourselves with that one choice? And I feel like sometimes it's like that courage to do that crazy thing is either gonna be your demise.
yeah.
Or you can end up being Sarah Kane,
Yeah.
who wrote 448 Psychosis and
Yeah.
all of those.
Yeah.
But I think the big thing is it should have a purpose. So grotesque for the sake of grotesque doesn't make sense. Weird for the sake of weird doesn't make sense. It has to have a meaning in that story.
Yeah.
Let's talk about commission a little bit. Would you, or have you done any commission writing so far? I know a lot of people are looking for youth theatre writing. So I work with the youth theatre at Derby Theatre, and one of the big things is there aren't that many good plays for young people. There are either not enough characters we have groups of 20, 30 kids, and in order to give all of them lines or things to do in that play, even if we have a chorus, it's really difficult to find good plays and to find plays that don't pander to a young audience, who don't put them to a lower intelligence level than children actually have.
Yeah.
Is that something you'd be interested in doing?
Yeah, definitely. There was I was in talks with somebody to sort of come up with a Christmas play for this year, and then that sort of fell apart, and it's going to be something else next year. But I am going to be doing something hopefully next year where I'm writing for children's youth theatre with a children and adult audience. So it's something that I'm sure I will enjoy doing it, because I've written children's stories before, but I've never attempted children's theatre.
Yeah.
So for that reason, I would do that commission for that particular reason. Other commissions,
As in, for example, I know a lot of theatres put money together and they commission 3 writers to write plays for children to act in. So a lot of youth theatres around the country, I know they're looking for more than just a Christmas pantomime. They're looking for things that speak to young people, so teenagers, stuff like that. Would you be interested in writing something like that? So a play for 30 characters, for example?
it'd be a challenge, but I'd definitely go for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have to, I think, because at the moment there's nothing like that in my portfolio, and I can't really see anything being in my portfolio that's like that. Like my TV pilot's got a good amount of characters in, but like the actual main characters, there's probably 7.
Yeah, and I think that's the big issue is with children especially, it's not having main characters, because you don't want to put on anyone too much pressure to learn 4 times more lines than everybody else, and also you don't want to put that pressure on everybody else saying you weren't good enough to be a main part.
It's sort of catering for the children mainly. Like
Yeah.
that's what you're writing it for. You're not. I would find that I'm writing it for the fact that these children want to act.
Exactly.
So let's write equal parts. If there's 30 kids, let's write 30 equal parts, and everybody gets their say.
Yeah.
Just as much as the kid on their right.
And then it needs to be entertaining
Of
for
course.
both kids and adults.
Yeah.
And it needs to make sense on. It's like just thinking about it. It's a Goliath task, isn't it? Just it's
Mhm.
finding that balance and that voice for each individual child. And I feel like that's what I want to come back to is kind of voice as a writer. And what I've been just thinking about is like plays that change like nations. You have Looking Back in Anger. That was done in Derby by a technician, and then it kind of like exploded into this massive thing all of a sudden. And that person wasn't commissioned. He wrote that because he felt like he was saying something about the time. And do you feel like that is the reason that you got into writing, was because you wanted your voice heard and then wanted to use the medium of writing to get into that kind of style? Or what kind of like drove you to then say I'm a writer, I want to pursue that path of the tree of performing arts?
I think I wouldn't say I got into writing to sort of get my writer's voice out there.
Yeah.
To be honest, that's something that's always driven into us. When we was in theatre arts, when I was at writing for performance, the entirety about it was sort of, what is your voice and what do you want to say? And I just thought, well, I don't want to say something all the time. Sometimes I want to just write something for entertainment's purpose, to give somebody the relief and sort of coming away from reality for a little bit, sitting in front of the TV for an hour and watching an entertaining show that doesn't have to make you think about all the crazy stuff that's going on
Yeah.
in the world. So for me, I didn't get into writing to put my voice out there. I got into writing because I want to be an actor, and I couldn't get the acting roles that I wanted to, or I was always being cast as the scrawny little boy that like got 2 lines at the end of the play or whatever. And I thought, no, I know that I'm capable of doing other stuff, and I'm going to prove that by writing something and playing this character. And that's how I sort of got into it. But since getting into writing, I haven't written anything that I would act as. So it's like it's come around a full loop of, this is why I did writing, because I want to give myself acting jobs, and I haven't given myself any acting jobs with everything that I've written.
Yeah.
But I'm enjoying what I'm writing, I think, is the main thing about it. That's the
really
biggest
what
thing about
matters.
it. Yeah.
But everyone wants that message, that political thing.
I think it's
The
important.
Kanye
to
West
have
thing
that.
at the moment, definitely.
Yeah. This guy's my brother. I love this guy.
Give me a hug.
But that's what everyone tells you. They go, oh, you need to have a message. You need to.
What's your manifesto?
Exactly.
It's
So
the biggest
all of the lecturers say, why are you writing this now? Why is this important for today? And then you go and you see what's being put into theaters, and you ask the same questions. You go, why are we putting this on now? This play that's 40 years old, why is this relevant today? And it's not.
It sells.
Because it's not always about the message and political activism. Sometimes you want to make money, and sometimes you want to entertain people. But when you go to apply to the Arts Council, they don't care about things like that. They want to have a political message, and they want to say, why this play now? Why is it important?
How does it feed into the wider, audience just outside the stage as well?
So by speaking to people in the industry about our kind of work, what we make, they say, oh, I didn't know the two of you were foreigners, for example. You should definitely write a play about your experiences as foreigners in the UK. And I say, why? It's not what I'm interested in at the moment.
My
but people would love it.
It's like my personality is not my nationality.
Exactly.
I am Farsi. I am also German Turkish.
You don't want to make a big deal of your background being the reason that you're
Yeah, and I feel like that's a huge problem that I find myself with. Is like I've been told one of the main reasons that I went into theatre was to then write a play about being German Turkish and that massive divide, but not now. What I care about now is doing a play about being a religious cult leader, or doing a play about board games.
Yeah.
Something that I as a person enjoy right now. And then when I find the time and the right space and mind that I want to then go and say, okay, this is my story, this is what I did enjoy about my life, this is what I personally think should change. And yes, and I feel like theatre massively has been scrutinized and is just used as a weapon of change.
Yeah.
And it has been a weapon of change, in Greece. But in Greece you had, these plays that were made to inform the public about, ethics and morals. But then you had funny stuff on as well, people running around naked and people singing, having a good time. And I feel like we need to give both of them the platform.
How do you find opportunities? Do you identify as male?
Yes.
Do you identify as white?
Yes.
Do you identify as straight?
Yes.
Do you feel like it's more difficult because of all of those three things to find writing opportunities?
Yeah, I would say so. Because a lot of the opportunities that are out there, specifically, we're all about diversity. I love seeing diversity on the stage and writers, even our writers' room was diverse to say the least. And it's great that everybody's having a focus on it, but if everybody has a focus on it, all of the opportunities become, you must be BAME or LGBTQT or a woman, and that's fine. But for me as a white straight male, that can be hard to find those particular opportunities to get in the industry that is supposedly equal to everybody,
So have you found opportunities that you didn't even apply for because you didn't meet those sort of criteria?
Yeah, there's a lot out there that I would start reading the criteria for it, and we want to see a stage play about this, or a 10-minute radio play about this, and we want to see a 10-minute radio play about male suicide. That was something I was really, really interested in about writing. And I started writing the idea, and then the criteria, the eligibility to actually apply for it was you must be BAME. And I was like, but why do I have to be BAME to write a 10-minute play about male suicide?
I feel like also with this argument that I feel like the need to mention, I find it interesting that I have the need to mention it. This is such a difficult one, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Because even just taking it in your mouth, you feel the fear of saying the wrong thing and then putting yourself in the position of a person that you are not yourself. We all have the ability of having many people credit us as just being, not normal people, but okay, good people, And then when you talk about these things, you're put in a light of somebody that you're not, because you want to. You're not necessarily complaining, but I think you're making an awareness about the fact that you feel you are being restricted because these opportunities are restricted.
Yeah, I'm not complaining at all. It is just a matter of diversity has gone to a point of, if this is the scale and you've got all these white males writing plays and writing material, and okay, let's focus on the other end of the scale. Well, that's what happens. We end up focusing on that side. And nobody wants anything from
that's true.
this
and
side.
I've heard a lot of people say, I think it was a writer who's a female and she's BAME, and she said, I started writing because there were no acting parts for anyone like myself. Mm-hmm. So they said two black women having a conversation longer than 5 minutes only appeared in 3 plays or something like that, which is absolutely disgusting. So that's why this is happening now, and we're asking for those sort of voices, because there has been a definite subjugation of females, of BAME performers, of LGBT performers, but there's a huge subjugation based on age as well, and that's something that's not addressed.
Yeah.
So the fact, that's the one that we feel. We're both foreigners, but we don't feel subjugated because of that. We don't feel discriminated because of our nationality, but I think all of us have felt discriminated because of our age. Mm-hmm. Because in this industry especially, there is a suffering that you have to get through.
Yeah,
before.
endure. You have to earn the right.
But there's no industry like it, and we're gonna leave it there because we hate complaining. Thank you very much for watching. I've been Andy,
Fatih.
and thank you to Charlie.
Thank you.
A great writer. Look out for his work because we definitely will, and hopefully we'll have a collaboration soon because we love working with people who are passionate about what they do, just like we are. Thank you for watching, and hopefully you'll keep watching these podcasts as we make them.
Leave some comments below if you disagree with us. We'd love to have a conversation going on in the comments as well.
Yeah, tell me if you like my hat. If not, don't say anything. And hopefully you'll support us the same way you support us throughout the other podcasts because it's been extremely nice to us and we've had amazing comments about it. So thank you all and hope you have a great day.